Up to now, we've seen how powerful pivot tables can be by making it really easy to group and aggregate the data you have into sums, average, minimums, maximums, all that good stuff. Just those features alone will make you a really viable asset wherever you go. But now it's time to go to the next level. In addition to knowing how much of a product we sold every day, wouldn't it be really interesting to know what percent of sales happen each day? What percent of sales for a day a particular product was? What about knowing how much sales increased or decreased from one day to the next, or 1 month to the next, or whatever? These are what we call table calculations in Pivot Table, and can turn a very rich pivot table into a tool that can make forecasts and projections. Table calculations will take your analysis to the next level by quickly being able to pinpoint trends in the data. Couple it with conditional formatting, and you'll be easily the most sought after person in the office when it comes to analyzing data. It's going to really make your pivots pop. So let's go ahead and get started. So for this lesson, we're going to use a pivot table based on the bakery data, and that's going to be on the table calculations. And if we click on our pivot, you can see that we have items as rows, and then we have days as columns, and then at their intersection or their pivot, we've got this just the total sum of revenue. So the first thing we're going to do is just add a percent of the grand total. So here's all the sales by product and by day for the entire week. What we want to do is see what percentage of the total sales each product and day location made. So I'm going to go over here to my values, click the drop down, go to value field settings, move that over. Now up to this point we've only worked in the summarize field by tab. We want to go to the show values as tab. And now what we want to do is look here. It says show values as no calculation. Well, the first thing we're going to do in the simplest is just go here and go percent of grand total. And click OK. So what that did is for every item, it showed the percentage it was of the grand total for the week. And then the subtotals worked the same way. So I can see that Saturday was the day I brought in the most revenue, and Tuesday was the littlest. So this is really interesting. You can see that with numbers too, but the percentages make it kind of nice. Now, what if I want to see the total item sales per day, or where the items sold the best on which day? So we'll go click on our drop down again to get value field settings, show values as, and let's see what happens when we do percent of column total, and click OK. So now we see a breakdown of what products sold the best on each day. So on Tuesday, cake sold the best. And then you look on Friday, cake still sold the best. Second place was cupcakes. Again, pretty interesting. Let's try the other one. Let's go show values by row total. And now it tallies them up by row. So now we know what day items sold the most. So cakes, even though they sold good, they sold the best on Saturday and Sunday. So that's pretty neat having that little bit of difference. But now let's take the other tool that we learned, the conditional formatting for pivots, and let's throw a heat map on this pivot table. And you're really going to like this. So now I'll go up to my conditional formatting, come down here, and I'm going to do a simple green and white pivot. And I've got my little, since I just did on the cell, I've got my little helper here. I can click on that and say, yes, I want to apply the formatting to all cells showing sum of revenue for item and day. So that's going to basically apply to my pivot table. Click that. Now I can really see, what did the best. So on Sunday for pies, Sunday was the best. Over here for cupcakes, Friday was the best. And I can change that too. Now I can change this pivot to go back to being on the columns. And it changes that because it's doing the tallies by columns. So we see easily cakes was the best, but we start to see those little color differences that really make the values we want to see jump out at you. All right, well, let's keep going. So now what would be really cool to see is if we could see the difference in sales from day to day, how things went up or down. So let's try that. So now we're going to go in and look at the difference. Let's go to our value field settings, and we're going to look at show values as a difference from. Okay, so we need to pick a base field, and this is what we want the difference to be from to show from one to the next. We're going to pick day because we want to see how things increase or decrease every day. Now we could show it against any one of the base days that's already in there, but what you typically do is go to the base item that's previous and click OK. And now the pivot table is showing us that we had 670 more items on Wednesday than we did Tuesday. And from Wednesday to Thursday, we had 168 more. And then 720, 672, and then Sunday we went down. See how it's got a negative? So that's really neat to see a difference there. But we need to change our heat map now because the negatives and positives, they're kind of mixing. And we really want to be able to see where we actually lost sales for a day. So let's go back to our conditional formatting, manage rules. This will be super, super easy to modify. We'll click edit rules. And instead of a 2-color scale, we'll go to 3. And we're going to still go with lowest value. Now the midpoint is not going to be a percentile. We want it to be a number. And the number is just 0. And then the max is the highest value. So for things under 0, I'm going to change the color and make those red. And then things that are to 0, I'm going to make that white. Then click OK. Apply that and click OK. Wow! How cool is that? My heat map now shows me really, really quickly which days we lost sales and for which products, and which days we did better and gained sales. So that's just by the difference from the dollar amount. Let's just do the percentage as well. So I'll come in here, show values as difference percent, difference from, and click OK. And now we've just got the percent difference from. Same kind of thing, but it just shows more of a percentage. That's how we're going. So now the next one we're going to do is percent of. That's pretty similar to the difference from, but there's a subtle difference that we'll show you. Click here, show values as, percent of, and again we're going to have the base item be day and previous, and click OK. Now before I click OK, notice all these were red because they went down. Click OK, and everything's green again. So with the percent of, it shows you the percentage that that cell is above or below the previous one. Okay, so on Wednesday, this is 158% more than it was Tuesday. And then on Thursday, we went up 109%, Friday 136, Saturday 124, and Sunday 97. So this is kind of weird because when sales went down the other way, we got a negative number. This is a percent of, so technically speaking, when the number is less than 100%, sales went down. When it's over, sales went up. I'll modify the pivot real quick to show you that. If I just change my rule now, the midpoint, it's no longer going to be 0, it'll be 1. And click apply and OK. So now the heat map we recognize is back, but you see, instead of displaying a negative number, it just says that this value is 97.8% of this number. Again, they're kind of similar. I typically go with the percent difference. It makes more sense to me, but there are applications for this as well. So the last set of table calculations we're going to do is running total and running total percent. So let's click our value field settings. And we'll go to show values as, set a percent of, we're going to go all the way down to running total in day. Click OK. And now you see we've got a running total. So the first day, cakes were sold 1,140. And then on day 2, this is these two numbers added together. And on Thursday, it's going to add Thursday's total to that. So it's constantly a running total up to the end of the week to the final amounts. This is pretty neat, but again, has another feature. Instead of just the sum of the numeric running total, we could do running total percent and click OK. Now where this is kind of useful, I'm going to change the heat map again. What I'm going to do is modify this heat map here. I'll go to manage rules, edit, and this time I want the midpoint to be 0.8 because that's 80%. And I'm going to keep the colors red and green. So what this is good for, the running total, is let's say you want to know when you get to 80% of your revenue for the week. Well, now 80% and above will be green and below 80 will be red. So this is really good for project tracking and finding thresholds of things. So that's it. That's your lesson on table calculations. As we've seen, it's really going to change the way you can interact with your pivots and make them even more predictive and spot trends easier. Really, really powerful when we combine it with conditional formatting to have the right kind of heat map in there. And there were a couple more options. There are a couple more options in the table calculations that we didn't get to today, but I think you have enough knowledge and skill to go try those on your own. All right, well, let's get ready for the next lesson.